Oh, come behold the works of God, the nations at his feet.
Welcome to Calvary Chapel Corinth with Senior Pastor Charlie Villard. Our desire is to comfort those in any affliction with the comfort by which we ourselves have been comforted by God. We are blessed to have you join us today as we dig into God's Word, chapter by chapter, verse by verse.
Man, so Exodus chapter 1. I do have a little list. I meant to go through this like 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. But I'll go through it tonight because it's as we see the end of Joseph's life. There's all kinds of stories here that we miss, because Scripture just doesn't cover it all. But we go back to verse 1. It says, "Now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Each man and his household came with Jacob: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died." What a small line for such a crazy story. Joseph died, all of his brothers, and all that generation. The children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew exceedingly mighty. And the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, "Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply." And it happened in the event of war, that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were in dread of the children of Israel. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, and mortar, and brick, and in all manner of service in the field. And all their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. Let's just go back and kind of break this down. Of course, now my phone's open. I'm going to get messages constantly. So I wanted to go through this thing I had found. It was a summary of Joseph and as a picture of the Lord. And it's right to look at it because there's so many. There's 49 line items. I'm just kind of read through them. But as we continue in the book of Exodus, and I say continue because it's not a different story, right? The story didn't end. And actually, the word Exodus means these are the names of, right? So in Hebrew, it's somewhere in similar meaning, these are the names of. And in the Greek, it means to go. So the Greek term was what we generally use it for, is there's a mass exodus out of somewhere. You'd see it in the news, the mass exodus out of California following COVID, or states that people were leaving. So that's, the most often used term, but in the Hebrew, this was, and the names are, right? So continuing on in the same story, it's just broken up here. Same writer, Moses himself, as I believe Genesis, though I made the case that it's God's story. God wrote Genesis, but told it to Moses. And Moses, writing this, he says, "And now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt." He's building an account moving forward of the beginnings of the nation of Israel. Says the children of Israel, he came to Egypt, each man with his household came with Jacob: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. It's crazy that 70 people will turn into a couple of million. But there's a big time jump in this one sort of set of verses here. So in 6 it says, "And Joseph died, all his brothers, and all that generation." So we get all these details about Joseph's life, and when we end the book of Genesis and we jump into the book of Exodus, there's this big time gap, that we don't really know. Hopefully he spent the rest of his life continuing serving Pharaoh successfully. We don't have anything otherwise, but they continued to grow, and they were successful as a nation. They multiplied. And there'll be some 430 years or so, 400 years between the end of the book of Genesis and then the mass growth of the nation of Israel, and then we find themselves in in slavery. But looking at Joseph, I think it'd be good just one sort of last time, as we reference him, we look at all the ways that Joseph represented the Lord Jesus, how he was sort of looked like him. So I grabbed this from an article online. It says, Joseph, one of the most remarkable portraits of Jesus the Messiah in all of the Bible. In many ways, his life illustrated the future life and the works of the Lord Jesus. Here are a few ways in which Joseph's life points toward the person and the work of Christ. Joseph was a shepherd. Joseph was loved by his father. Joseph was sent to his brethren. Joseph was hated by his brothers. Joseph prophesied his own coming glory. Joseph was rejected by his brothers. Joseph endured unjust punishment from his brothers. Joseph was sentenced to a pit. Joseph was condemned to the pit, though the leader knew he should go free. Joseph was sold for pieces of silver. Joseph was handed over to the Gentiles. He was regarded as dead, but was raised out of the pit. Joseph went to Egypt. He was made a servant. He was tempted severely, but did not sin. He was falsely accused. He had made no defense in the face of false accusations. He was cast into prison, numbered with sinners and criminals. Endured unjust punishment from Gentiles. Was associated with two other criminals. One criminal was pardoned and the other criminal was not. That one was cool. I hadn't really put that together until I started reading. I was like, oh, the baker and the butler. What a cool picture of the Lord on the cross. Joseph showed compassion. He brought a message of deliverance in prison, wanted to be remembered, and was shown to have divine wisdom. He was recognized as having the Spirit of God, was betrayed by his friends, was glorified after his humility, was honored among Gentiles while still despised and forgotten by his brethren. Joseph was given a Gentile bride. It's a little different, but it's the idea, right, that the church is the bride. Just so it's, I'm not reading heresy. The Lord, his bride, is us, the church. Joseph was blessed. He blessed the world with bread. He became the only source of bread for the world. The world was instructed to go to Joseph and do whatever he said to do. Joseph was given the name God speaks and he lives. Joseph's brethren were compelled to leave their own land. And in the second appearing, Joseph did not go to the first to his brothers. They came to him. Joseph knew his brethren, even while unknown and unrecognized by them. Joseph blessed his brethren without their knowledge and wanted all of them to come to him. There was a significant time gap between Joseph's initial relationship with his brothers and his second relationship to his brothers. He gave his brothers a way of deliverance through substitution. That's a cool one. I was like, man, well, that's an interesting one to dig into. We won't have the time to sort of dig into all of these, but it was one that stood out to me as well. Joseph's second coming, quote unquote, to his brothers had two appearances. Joseph made himself known to his brethren at his second appearing to them. Joseph was revealed as a man of compassion, and his brothers repented of rejecting him with great amazement and tears. Joseph allowed no fellowship, as in eating together, with his brothers until they repented, and he revealed himself to them. Joseph's brethren went forth to proclaim his glory, and he made provision for his brethren. Joseph prepared a place for his brethren, and then received them there. Joseph brought Jew and Gentile together in a land, which is what the Lord has done for us. We get adopted in as Gentiles into his family. I always ask, is there not a Jew in here, right? No one's Jewish. Right, so we're not God's chosen people in the regard of who he first started a nation with. But God always had us in his mind, right? He created us and intended for us to all come together. And so, we have a cool layout of Joseph's life in Scripture and how all the things, but what a neat summary to just think about all of the, as people were reading through this, or living life, all of that was forgotten. All of it, right? And it didn't take long, right? His generation would pass away. The next generation would remember for a bit, but that generation would pass away. Then no one would remember. And the leaders of Egypt would forget about all that he had done. It says in 7, but the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Hundreds of years will pass. They will become a massive nation, likely 2 or 3 million people strong, right? Not just the men, but the women, the children, servants. This nation has, much like Christianity in a way, right? That anytime, well, I kind of jumped ahead, but anytime pressure is added, it grows, right? It's what would happen. They persecuted the Christians, and the church just grew. And such is the nation of Israel in general. And there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. And they're not even in their homeland anymore. But this new king is a smart guy, right? He knows to retain power, you have to have a control over things. And good kings use mercy and grace and love. Bad kings use power and might and torture and slavery to keep people under control. It's the difference between, America's not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. And people that go, well, our democracy is at stake. No, it's not at stake. It's not a democracy. Stop calling it a democracy, because the more they say it's at stake, the more people believe it's a democracy, right? It's a constitutional republic. The nation of Israel, my point with that one is you look at something opposite of this nation, like a socialist communist country. Dictators leading by power and by fear. That's not how this nation is supposed to be led. And it's not how God leads his people, right? He tells them, hey, by the way, follow me, and I'll bless you, and I'll prosper you. And, we're going to go through all kinds of stuff with the nation of Israel. But he's a king, that used mercy and grace. And Joseph, as Pharaoh's representative, did the same with people. This new king, he's not going to be the same way, right? Maybe he looked back over history and said, man, I want to be a great king. What will make me a great king? I'll have to control over my nation and make sure that we become mighty. And anybody who's not, and historically there's evidence that they might have had struggles with other nations, and the king's fear is that if Israel banded with any other nation, that would overwhelm the power of the Egyptians. So he said to his people, his people, not like all of them, I'm sure, right? His closest leaders, people that can affect the nation, and he says to them, look at the people of the children of Israel are more than mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. And it happened in the event of war that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. As a parent, we can raise kids in a couple of ways, right? We could raise them with fear, and I know, we've probably all done it. It's like, do that again, and you're gonna get it, right? That's it, whatever that is. My mom most of the time was nothing, right? You just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And then, you have some kids that you can, talk with them and love them and show them mercy and grace, and they do what you've been asked. And you could have all of those kids, none of those kids, a mixture of those kids, I would assume. Us all have lots of kids. So, right, but none of them are probably the same, right? They're going to have different variations in different degrees. There's Don McClure taught on it, who's one of the originals in the Calvary movement, and his son Mike McClure was our pastor for a while out in San Jose. And he taught on there's three types of things, 3 P's in that. It's pressure, praise, and this happens every time I go through the 3. Pressure, praise, pain. Perseverance is a pretty good one. No, it's pain. He had 3 kids, 3 boys, all of them one of each of those. The one who works off praise is great, right? Because you send them along their way, you build them up a little bit, their confidence, and they go do those things. That really was Mike, our pastor. And when you meet him, you can see it, right? His other son, he only learned through pressure. You have to keep on him. You have to keep saying things, keep checking in, and keep doing things. And his third son, Marcus. I'm pretty sure it's Marcus. That doesn't matter. His third son was pain. And the only way he could learn was to learn through pain. And he'd have to allow pain in his life, right? Not rescue him, not save him. And, there are people like that. Being a boss at work, I'm realizing how some people work. I have people that work for me that they don't even really expect a change to occur. They just want you to hear them, right? And then you tell them they're doing a great job and you send them back to, well, man, no one from my work watches. They're going to see my tactics now. But you hear them out and you give them some praise and you send them on their way, and it builds them up. I can see it, right? It builds their confidence and they go back to work and they do great things. And then there's the people that it's annoying, man, because I'm not a micromanager. I don't like looking over someone's shoulder, but I got to constantly follow up. You got to ask about stuff. My boss is not a micromanager, and nor am I, and I kind of take my hands off, and sometimes to my detriment, I'm like, well, when did that happen? Well, last week. Well, why didn't anyone say anything last week? Why am I just finding out about it now? And then there's the people that learn through pain, right? It's like, you don't do that, you're going to get your hand caught or something, right? That's not happened, but they have to learn the most painful way possible in order to grow. A king, a smart one, tries to figure out how to lead his people, right? God's a good leader. God allows pain in our life. He knows when it's going to work and when it's not. God praises us in many ways. And God keeps pressure on us, right, as well, because we need it. I need it. I have to. If we talked about a little on Sunday, that like hard pressed but not crushed. God has to keep pressure on me to keep moving forward, because if not, I sit back and I start to just kind of relax a little bit. Then I get lazy and I find myself probably overwhelmed listening to the enemy constantly going, oh, I'm just questioning everything in the world right now. It's not like I don't question my call. I absolutely do, probably every day. But she and I were just talking about in the car. There are some things that I struggled with the first year or two that I don't even think about anymore. So I know God is growing. And then there are times you go back and you go, well, you gotta work with people again, because you got to get back to where you needed to be. You relaxed too long, right? So this new king, he's just going to go, we're going to deal with them painfully. We're going to make their lives so hard. He's not learning about them. We have no record that he went in to get to know them, talk to the leaders. He just went, well, I'm looking, and that's overwhelming, right? He's not godly, right? He's not going, hey, Lord, what do I do? This seems overwhelming. What do I do in these circumstances? He says, let's deal with them shrewdly. Let's work them wicked hard, to the point where we may have to beat them, but they'll be so tired. They'll feel so much pressure and pain that they won't want to line up against us. We'll look like we're in control. And he says, why? Right? Because if we don't, then they're going to continue to multiply and it happen in the event of war. And a war comes along and they join our enemy, we're in trouble. And 11, it says, therefore, they set taskmasters over them. Right? So they're going along. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. They're building out this structure that will keep in line groups of Israelites. Man, can you imagine? I don't know. I relate it back to work, right? You have good managers that work for you and you have bad managers. And it stinks. When you have great ones, it's awesome. Think about anything. You get a bad manager and they affect the entire group, right? And it's hard because you try to give the example and give instruction and you hope they'll learn that and they'll do the same thing. In a way, we do it with parenting, right? Kids with older kids, you want them to be a good example for the youngers, and the youngers look, and it passes on and passes on. I can imagine there were some great taskmasters, probably, right? Even though it was like, deal with them shrewdly, there's somebody in there that's like, I don't want to hurt them. I'll keep my group in line. He may even go, hey, look, guys, I have my instructions. I need you to do this. I don't want to do what's being done to the rest of your nation. I want to get the work done that we need to get done. And then I'm sure there were people that loved hurting the Israelites, right? Just absolutely loved indulging in that. So I'm sure there's all kinds in there, these taskmasters. He says, set the taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. So Israel's building nations for them. I don't know if I have any evidence, but we look at the pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids, and you're in amazement on how those things were built. These big, massive stones and how they got to places. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these things were built on Israel's blood, sweat, and tears. and 12, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. It's crazy. The amount of pressure and pain that's being inflicted on them. And they're not stopping growing. God's still blessing them. Well, because why, right? One, they don't understand who the God is that the nation of Israel has been, looked over by, right? It's God. Think about like multiplying, right? It's God who opens the womb. It's God who closes the womb. He's opening, he's blessing. They're continuing to have kids. And I imagine it's probably frustrating, right? The king goes, hey, go take care of that stuff. I got other things to do, kingly, whatever. And then comes back and goes, well, why is there more of them? I told you to work hard so that there was less, and I see more, right? And he probably beats his taskmasters, and then the mean ones go beat them harder, and then they grow more. And he comes back and goes, wait, what did I tell you? How is there more of them? What is happening here? This process is what God uses in our lives, right? The persecution, struggles, the pressure that happens upon us, that God allows in our lives, he uses that to grow us. Maybe we don't all multiply children out of us. We multiply. We start investing in others grow, the Christianity grows. This is exactly what happened. And it'd be interesting to look back, I don't know, if there's a Pharisee that goes to heaven, I'm going to go, hey, did you guys ever consider what happened to the nation of Israel when you started persecuting the Christians? When they, when the nation was in Egypt and they, got all this pressure and pain and rigor, and then they continued to grow. If you had left Christianity alone, it might have died. I mean, it probably wouldn't have, because it's what God does. But instead, they go, well, how is this religion still growing? I don't understand. I thought we were killing them all. Oh, man, for every one you kill, God's bringing 20 more in. So they built these cities, and the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. Right now, it's become a problem that the king probably doesn't want to have, and all the people, they're like, oh, no, what's happening? No matter what we do, it's a problem. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor. When they made their lives bitter with hard bondage and mortar and brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. A cool way to think that they are probably beating them, pushing them, probably killing them, no doubt. And then there's just keeps more and more and more. It's like gremlins. You get them wet, right? And more pop out. You keep doing it, the more they pop out, they keep going and going. And it's like, oh man, we're going to get overrun, right? And then a smart gremlin knows that if I put water on myself, I'm going to get more. It doesn't even have to be an accident, right? They just keep descending upon them. No matter what they do, they don't break them. In 15, it says, then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. He's like, I got to change my strategy. Speaks to the midwives, of whom the name of one was Sifra, and the other name was Puah. And he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on their birth stools, if it is a son, then you shall kill them. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. So this birth stool, what a cool term. Like, oh man, birth stools. Anything I say, I have zero experience in because I've never had a baby. I imagine this is really uncomfortable, right? The idea is like two stones. You put like one butt cheek on each, and you straddle over it, and they're set up a little bit, and a baby comes out. And that's a very simplified version. I'm sure there was lots of screaming and lots of craziness and all this, stuff that comes with having a baby. But the idea is that the nation of Israel is multiplying. They're having multiple kids all day long. And, the midwives are going along. And he's smart, right? He's going to these people because they're leaders of midwives. They likely have teams of midwives that they're doing too, right? So they're probably going along, hey, make sure you're helping all right. And then because it's a labor-intensive nation now, right? They go have their kid, and then they got to go back to doing whatever they were doing. So they go in, they pop a kid out, and they go. Don't have 12-week maternity leave and another midwife to help them, right? They're just expected to move about their way. So he's like, well, you know what? Here's the thing. Keep multiplying. So I'll go to the source of the multiplication, and we'll take it out. What do? Well, if there's no men around and the nation of Israel is not mixing with the nation of Egypt, right? They're not, at least not in a mass. Take the babies when they're born, take them straight out from the mom and kill them. It's the best way we can do it. So he doesn't, I don't know. Why don't you go talk to the nation of Israel and befriend them, maybe, and work together? He's got this mentality like, we need to stop this from occurring. So he talks to these two ladies and he says, I need you to, when you're doing the duties, when you're doing it, and he says for the Hebrew women. So obviously they're working the same process for the Egyptian women. He says for the Hebrew women, if it's a son, kill him. Man, what a crazy thing to ask someone whose job is to bring children into the world. You think about somebody who winds up working at an abortion clinic, and abortions are performed all day long, and someone goes, hey, I need you to do that. And you go, well, what do I do? I mean, the answer should be clear. But it's probably not always. So he says, I need you to take them, I need you to kill them. Baby infants, just born. But the midwives feared God. What a spectacular statement. The fear of God produces morality, right? It produces a conscience and compassion and love. Highlight that if you highlight your Bible. Mine, I try to keep pristine. But it just stood out to me. They feared God. But the fear of God will produce in someone's life a conscience that says, no, I can't do that. That's wrong. No, I won't hurt that person. It'd be wrong for me to do that. No, I won't kill a baby. So they go, man, no, we fear God. And they did not do as the king of Egypt commanded, but saved the male children alive. He did the opposite, what he said. And you're like, no. More than that, we're going to make sure they survive. And like, I'm going, well, how? How would they even do that? So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing and saved the male children alive? So why are they still growing? What is the problem here? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. I like this. It can be taken many ways, but I'm going to gather, just my thought on it, that the Egyptian women are very feminine, probably not overly muscular, or and they're probably worshipped. They're probably softer. We'll just go with that. The Hebrew women, they've been working hard. They've been laboring. They're probably more physically fit. They're probably, they got to get back at their work again, or they're going to get murdered and they got children and families to take care of. They're probably in my head, they're probably built in a way that they can move on quicker from a pregnancy, or from a birth. Just my thought. It says, because they are lively and give birth before the midwives come to them. Two thoughts here. One, this is a lie, right? It could be a lie, right? It could be. There's the idea here, though, that lying is something God hates. It's on the list of things he hates. They could be facing now what is their government, right? And their government is telling them to do something against their conscience and against what God says. And so they lie to their government, which is better than lying to God. Not an excuse for lying, but it's a possibility they have come up with a lie. And so because of that, they would rather lie to them and go against what God says, which is don't lie, but save a life, which becomes more important. And look, there are people that could look at this and go, well, that's what they did, so I'd rather lie here and, go against what God says and lie, but not go against God's direct command to commit murder. And so you start to wager, like, what's really the right direction here? Lie and sin, or murder and sin? I'd like to think what they did was something a little different. Maybe they lagged on their way to a birth. right? Like, oh, hey, they're having a birth. Oh, yeah, I'm on my way. Oh, no, I got to stop here for something, right? And then when they get there, the baby's already born and then it's gone and the woman's already gone. They're like, oh, no, sorry, I couldn't get there in time. These women, look at how strong they are. They have their kid on their own. They don't even need a midwife and they move about their way, so I couldn't get there. I'm sorry. I like to think that's the case probably, I mean, sort of still lying in a way. We should never lie. We should stand in the face of evil, and we should stand for what God says is true, because our fear of God should override our fear of man, fear of government, fear of anything. Who knows, right? I mean, maybe they were lying. I wouldn't fault them. We should always go for truth and stand in the face of tyranny, right? It's a tyrannical government that they're serving here. But in either case, it says, therefore, God dealt well with the midwives. So I like to think maybe their process was I just won't get there as quick as I need to be, And hey, look, I'm not saying your Egyptian women aren't great, but hey, they're not as strong as these Hebrew women. And they have their baby and they get back together and they get back at it and there's nothing we can do. The babies are gone. I don't know, right? They go hide them. So it said God dealt well with the midwives. That's not to say, like, look, God dealt well with Abraham and blessed him, right? And Abraham lied about who his wife was. It's my sister. Right? We've seen lying, and we've seen God work through that. I think Rahab, she lied, and God still blessed. So I don't think that should be the model and the example is like, well, then I'd rather lie to you than lie to God, so I'll lie to you, right? We should go, well, what's right? We should stand for what's right. But if we can come up with some tricky way in the meantime to go like, oh, hey, I just couldn't get there, sorry. Either way, God he dealt well with them. So you could make the case that they lied and God still blessed them. Either way. In 21, it says, and so it was because the midwives feared God that he provided households for them, right? Took care of them. God loved them and took care of them. They were working for the Lord, and because they feared him, they respected him. It's not a fear in this instance isn't just sitting in a room cowering and shaking, right? It's like, man, no, I love God. I respect God. I respect the rules he's put in place, the standards he's set. I didn't really intend to go down this road, but one could make the case when we struggle with sin, we don't really fear God. We don't really respect God. And habitual sin is tough, right? It's drug use, sex, pornography, gambling, eating. I mean, you go through the myriad of sin. And we can find ourselves in a place where we go, yeah, no, I can't seem to beat that. If we're being honest with ourselves, we probably enjoy it somewhere. Whatever it is, we get something out of it. But we should come to the realization that maybe we don't really fear and respect God and his standards the way we ought to. I've dealt with that in my own life. Like, Lord, I'm sorry. I don't even know why I don't respect you in the way that I should. I just keep doing it, regardless of what you say. I'll have to answer one day for those things. Not in a go to hell way. I believe I'm saved. I wouldn't be doing this, I don't think. But, still God's going to have conversations with me on these things. Like, even he does now. Like, you got to get that out of your life or something, right? And we all find ourselves in places of battle, but if we look back at it, we really don't respect the boundary and the standard that God has set enough to go, you know what? No. I will take the hardest line stance that I can. I will do the most extreme things that I can to stop this sin in my life. And that's what the Lord Jesus was talking about. If you have to cut your hand off, cut your hand off. Poke your eye out, right? Not, for me, in my background, computers are a really terrible thing. Being on a computer all day long. So for me, I was like, well, maybe my career in technology is done. Maybe I should do something different. Then we moved back here, and I didn't have a job. I had quit my job. I was, I still worked for them. They were paying me for a few months because of all the years I put in. I started the school of ministry and was like, no, you know what? I'm going to do whatever God calls me to do. I'll just get out of computers. I'll get back into more physical labor. And 3 months later, I was working a computer job again. I needed money. I need to provide for my family, and God brought one with a brother of all people. A great brother and a snake, 2 men that I worked for. That was the craziest thing to watch. It's literally like working, it's so dumb, but the angels, right? They sit on you. I got the little angel that's telling you to do stuff. You got the good one. But it was like that, right? It's like I know I can go to this guy and I can pray with him. We prayed before work and I can tell him, things, and then I have this other guy that I can't be who I am with because he'll punish me for it. For me, it was just like, no, I'm who I am. But if we stop and we look at our lives and we find ourselves struggling with sin, we should look at, do we really fear God? Do we really respect God and fear the consequences of those things? Because God will deal with that in your life. Right? I always like to go back to, my grace is sufficient for you. I mean, maybe that passes for a season, right? But sin just numbs us. We stop caring about things. We find ourselves caring less about others and about what God's mission is. So we should be people that fear God, like these midwives, right? And God deals with us. God deals with me in a gracious manner, a merciful manner. But they feared God. They didn't want to do. So if they lied, God blessed them and still worked through it with them. If they didn't lie and maybe they were just lagging, getting to the positions, either way, God blessed them for standing and doing something different, not just giving in. 22, so Pharaoh commanded all of his people, saying, every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. No doubt there was some perversion here too, right? A nation of women around a king. So I have no doubt he's taking them out, the men, because they're the ones that are going to impregnate all the women, right? There's all women. And there's no men around to protect. The women will need protection. They'll have children, daughters that they'll have to protect, so they would be more apt to do what the king says. He's not a stupid guy. It's interesting, though, as the new king came in, where did he learn these things? Right? The other king was so good. Over the course of time, history, some degree must have changed with each king to the point where this one went, yeah, I'm going to learn from the rest of them, and I'm gonna make sure I beat them. Let's go into chapter 2 a little bit. And a man of the house of Levi went and took as wife a daughter of Levi. So same tribal clan. So the woman conceived and bore a son. When she saw that he was a beautiful child. What a cool statement. I posted like a funny meme. Well, I find it funny. I post things a lot, and some people don't find them funny, and I get complaints here and there, like, that's terrible, you should have done that. But it was like, oh, it's back to school season, and everybody's going to be like, oh, look, my baby's going back to school, and it was a gremlin. Not like the Gizmo Cube, but the real gremlin with books and like a hat, and I was just like, man, it's so funny, because it's what's going to happen. We're going to have 7 million photos of people, and please, like, you guys all have cute kids. You don't have ugly kids. You can do it. But it's always like that, it's like, oh, look at my awesome baby. When my sister had her baby, I was like, remember how we talked about, like, if your baby wasn't cute, you'd want to know? Do you want to know? And she's like, oh. I'm like, she's totally cute. I don't even care, right? But, sometimes they're not cute. I mean, maybe they don't look like a gremlin, but that is the case. But Moses was a beautiful child. And I have no doubt, based on how God used him in his life, he probably was. Right? Beautiful looking, probably had a good spirit in him, right? He probably wasn't like a terrible child. She hid him 3 months. So she had the baby, and she's got him now, and she's trying to figure out how to move along. She doesn't want to lose her son. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, and put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. Something else that stuck out to me, she took an ark, right? An ark. The ark of the covenant, Noah's ark, the ark that he was built in. This cool picture of something to protect the life that's inside of it. But I can't imagine this was an easy thing for her to do. Probably not easy with a 3-month-old who could cry if you set him down on the ground to go make this little ark and someone finds him. Right, so she's working, trying to make sure his life is saved. She puts him in this little ark and she lays it in the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. So she's got his sister like, hey, watch and see what happens. Right? Keep an eye out. And then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. And her maidens walked along the riverside, and when they saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him, said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. She knew looking at him. This is not an Egyptian. It's really like Joseph would have been obvious, right? That without all his Egyptian garb and the makeup and all the things that he would have had, he looked like a Hebrew guy. But with all that stuff on, he blended in with the crowd. She knew when she looked at him, it's the Hebrew's kid. Then the sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women that she may nurse the child for you? Oh, she's smart. She's got a little plan going on here. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Wow, what a genius move. And be like, hey, here's what we're going to do. The Israelites today, smart people, right? Geniuses, medicine, technology, war, machines of war. God has blessed that nation even today. It's a teeny tiny place. Man, I hope to go one day. I was supposed to go last year and it just didn't work out. I've always wanted to go. But really for me, what's most important is not that I go to Israel, it's that I go with my pastor. I wanted to be with my pastor, my first experience. So we were supposed to go and have sort of a non-traditional tour of Israel. Non-traditional means a lot of probably exercise and not the picture of exercise like my pastor, but I was like, hey, if I die over there, then I shoot straight to heaven from Israel, so it's not a big deal, right? It'll be worth it. Mike and I had talked about, I was like, yeah, you don't want to be the guy that's always behind. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's true. It'll make for a good story, though. I'm just like, I'm dragging along. My leg is broken off and I'm bleeding and, fell off a mountain or something. So she's smart. She goes, hey, let me go get a nurse. Hey, Mom. So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter. No doubt. He knows. A baby knows, right? They know who their mother is. Spent 10 months growing inside of them. What a cool thing, because he's nursed by his mother. He's raised by his mother. But he has a different person taking care of, a different person that he would be his mother representative to the nation of Israel. And the child grew and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter and he became her son. It's cool, man. He marries into the family. He's royalty. She called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. Again, the reminder that names mean something, right? All biblical stuff. Don't name your kid Judas. Not a good idea, right? Please don't name your kid Jesus either, even if you say Jesus, right? That one always is like, that kid's name is Jesus. It's like, no, it's Jesus. It's Hispanic. I'm like, well, it's Jesus at the end of the day. And you're setting him up for some massive failures in life because he's going to be nothing like him, probably. But names do mean something. And I've always thought it was weird, right? Like, not the same correlation, but like we get a dog, right? We don't name it immediately. Like look at it, watch its personality, pray on it, really. Our first dog's name was Ezekiel, and he was our big, massive Doberman watchdog. It was like, that's what Ezekiel they were watchmen on the tower. And, and then Toby came along, and he's just Toby. When you see him, he's Toby. He's missing teeth, his tongue hangs out, he's cute. And then Ivan came along. Ivan is John in Russian. I was like, oh, that was some kind of cool name. But like babies, you're like, hey, have your kid. And by the way, get out of the hospital because we need your hospital bed. And by the way, you got to name your kid too. Man, I can't do that. That's too much pressure. How do I know what the name's going to be? How do I know who they're going to be yet? Right? And all things should be considered prayerfully, right? Because the name we give them means something. If you were here when I was Sunday, I was talking about the whole like Jewish naming thing. No, Catherine knows what it was called, Gematra or something, right? Names are meaningful. She calls him Moses because they drew him out of the water. It came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out to his brethren and he looked at their burdens. Actually, you know what? We're going to stop because I don't want to dig too far into this one. There's some cool stuff in here. So we'll just leave it partway through here because I drew him out of the water. So, the nation of Israel has become a nation. Millions of people, strong, mighty. And he says that in that people become fearful of their power, their mass. Today, if you look on the map of the nation of Israel, they would be nothing to fear. The Middle East could swarm over them in a heartbeat. But the people fear them, right? People fear them. They know. The nation of Israel is blessed by God. Whether that nation completely knows Messiah already came or not, they're still a powerful nation. They're a whining nation too, though, right? We're going to get the most perfect term, which is stiff-necked. Oh, I have a Jewish friend. Well, it's not a friend. I grew up, and there was a Jewish person in. I don't want to give too much because then it'll be obvious who the person was if you grew up in Bangor. But stiff-necked perfectly described the person. I'd never heard it until I was a believer, and I'm like, stiff-necked? Why do they call him that? And then you look it up, and you're like, oh man, that is so perfect. That's exactly how they are. It's like, no, I'm not doing anything different. No, right? And you're like, man, relax a little. At the beginning of the nation of Israel, we've watched the forefathers now, and they've passed. And that history, in many ways, is only with the nation of Israel now. And then the nation now grows in a mass, and now they find themselves in slavery, which is exactly what was foretold to them, right? And in the middle of this, let's not ever forget, in the middle of this nation, somewhere is a coffin sitting above ground with the body or bones at this point now of Joseph, 400 years that they'll spend. And we'll see it later on when they pick up his coffin and they bring it back to the promised land. So they haven't really forgotten, but that history and the goodwill and all that with Egypt has been forgotten. And that's it's God's way of moving us. That's how God does things, right? Sometimes he moves us out of places and you just know it's obvious. And other times he moves us out with pressure. Like, oh man, I feel like I got to get out of here. Yeah, it's probably God speaking to you. Maybe that is the case. Maybe you need to withstand, but maybe you need to consider leaving. If you find yourself in slavery and people are starting to beat you, pray really hard, right? Maybe God want you to persevere in that, stand against that, or leave. They're gonna take a beating as a nation, and they're gonna go and whine and complain later. You guys want to stand?
Thank you for joining us today. We pray this teaching has been a blessing to you. If you have any questions or would like to request prayer, you can visit us online at www.cccorinth.org. If you're local, come join us for a service at 125 School Road in Charleston, Maine. We want to remind you that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God. Remain armored up, and until next time, grace and peace.